welcome everyone. So tonight's workshop is about UI and design, and it's a crash course. It means that maybe in 1 hour or 1 hour and a half, my objective is to give you all the tools and all the tips to be able to design your own set of icons, some logo for your own startup, some graphical assets for a newsletter, all these kind of things that you need when you want to launch a startup. And basically, you don't have time to spend to find some UX designers to do the job for you or some graphical designer to do the job for you. And you don't have money neither to spend on this kind of stuff because you have lots of newsletters to send and assets to produce. And so you have to be able to build it them yourself, actually. So it's a workshop for non-designers because I personally have a background in engineering. I studied engineering in mathematics. I worked 3 years in the financial markets before launching Wagon and getting interested into web development. And so actually, I never learned design in some way. So when I launched this Wagon business, I had to be able to build some graphical assets and to get interested into all the resources and try to bootstrap a bit my own assets. And that's what I want to teach you tonight. So when I discuss with entrepreneurs in Paris or in other cities, sometimes I hear really strange things about design. I put some quotes that I sometimes hear from entrepreneurs. Some of them say, okay, I've got a brilliant idea of a web product, but I'm currently hiring a UX designer to make a complicated mockup of the application with dozens of pages. Okay. Or I hear things like, well, I've just paid $1,000 or whatever for a logo. Okay, but you've got a product already. Have you tried to sell it to some users already? No. Okay. Or I hear also things like, well, I need a web designer for my graphical identity, and I'm just stuck because I don't have the design sensitivity or whatever to do it on my own. Well, basically, this is nuts. This is really nonsense because when you launch a business, this is nuts actually. I like this slide. Because as I told you, well, you don't have time or money. You just have to get the hands dirty and learn to do it on your own at the end. So a bit of a disclaimer before I start, because I launched Wagon 3 years ago, discovering resources of design and everything. So what I will teach you tonight is by maybe using some old school resources. Because in the area of design, there are tons and tons and tons of new resources every day. So I think the number is fake. It's not 100 plus design resource every day. It was just some indicative number. But there are lots of new services in terms of design because it's easy to launch a new design service. So you have to keep updated. And maybe some of the tools I will show you tonight are a bit updated at the end. So that's a bit of a disclaimer for you. And to show you that there are lots of design resources, I think the best way to actually to see it is to go maybe on Product Hunt. So you know Product Hunt? It's a really popular website where anyone can post his own product. So let's make a quick study and just go on Product Hunt and look for design tools collections. So in Product Hunt, there is really there are so many products so that that's a bit hard to follow Product Hunt. Lots of new products every day, but that's interesting to look at the collections. So marketing collections or design collections, because then you have the best tools used by the industry on every topic: marketing, design, product management, whatever. So here, if we say design, for instance, and we looked at the collection, well, we have lots of different collections. So I'll just pick the first one to see what's going on in the design world right now. And here it is. So colors, for instance, really popular resource. I will speak about this one. I'm not outdated that much. So it's a resource to find nice color schemes. So I will speak about that later. The design resources from the Facebook guys. So Facebook has a designer team with some guidelines and some resources they use. So there is a product about that. Instant logo search, so if you need to search for a logo. So basically, if you want to keep updated, I suggest that you go on such collection pages and refresh it every day and try to keep updated at the end. So let me give you a bit the outline of the workshop. First, before going into the resource to find actually assets, icons, pictures, colors, we're going to speak about inspiration, because at some point when you want to design something, the first step for you is to find something to copy. Because you're not a designer, I'm not a designer. So the first step is to find inspiration and to copy the things that other designers have done, actually. So I will speak about different websites where you can find inspiration for either UI components, if you need inspiration for a login form, something like that, or an overall website, for the design of an overall website, or inspiration for anything creative, a logo or anything. Then I'll give you all the resources we use at Le Wagon to find actually assets, and I will tell you what's an asset, what's a graphical asset. So it can be a color, a font, an icon, a picture. There are lots of different categories of assets. And then in the third part of the workshop, I will give you my rules of thumb to make good design. Because there are, okay, maybe some graphical designers are really inventive and creative and creating a new world of design with fancy colors and green palm trees and whatever. But at the end, if you just follow some simple rules and you just want a design which is just clean and that works, you just have to follow a set of rules and that will work actually. So I will give you the rules that make you do good design at the end. And at the end of the workshop, we'll make a demo of a graphical tool which is called Sketch, which is used by most startups right now. And it's really a simple and user-friendly tool to reshape icons and do lots of things actually. So let's start. So first, we are going to speak about inspiration. Inspiration? Inspiration? Inspiration. Let's speak about inspiration. So as I told you, I am not a designer, you are not a designer, so the best way to make something that's well designed, well, it's just to not copy-paste. We say the fancy expression is find inspiration, but at the end it's just copy-pasting the work of other designers actually. And for that, the first step is to ask yourself, well, what are you looking for in terms of inspiration? Are you looking for a general inspiration because you need to build a logo for Le Wagon, let's say, back in the day? Or you need inspiration for icons about food? Or you need inspiration for a specific graphical component, for a login form, let's say, or for a payment form. So you have to ask yourself this question. For what am I looking for inspiration? What kind of things? So let's start with really the general website where you can find inspiration for anything creative at the end. That's called Dribble. You know about Dribble? So Dribble is a website where all the designers are posting their work. So I'm a designer, I'm making icons for clients, I'm making logos, I'm making web design and mockups, I'm making lots of different things, flyers, posters, whatever. And if I want to work on my self-branding, I will post all this work on Dribble. That's the platform used by all the designers. So the developers, they use GitHub. That's the place where you can know if a developer is a good one or not. That's where the developers post their work. Where the designers post their work, it's on Dribble, actually. So let's make a first challenge and try to find some inspiration on Dribble and general inspiration about lots of different things. So let's go on Dribble first. I think it's here. So when you get on the homepage of Dribble, you've got lots of the latest creation of the designer community, and you can search for anything, actually. So if I want to search for, let's say, Wagon, I have to find ideas to build the logo of Le Wagon, so I want to see how the designers are designing a wagon, actually. So you see that a wagon, it's not really nice, actually. So you've got this one, which is more like it's not really a wagon, it's more like a camping whatever. But you see there are different styles, like rounded cars, like modern ones. Actually, I don't know if you noticed, but the logo of Le Wagon is not a wagon. It's not a train wagon. It's just a car or a van at the end. Because a wagon is not a nice thing to design. So I can look to inspiration about, let's say, maybe a combi. Is this an English word, combi? Volkswagen. Yeah, OK. So this could have been something that inspired us to build the logo of Le Wagon at some point. So my point here is like, if you just don't know precisely what you're looking for, but just inspiration for a logo or an icon, you can just go and see what the designer community has done in that respect. Let's look for more like graphical component design. So let's say I want inspiration for a login form or a sign-up form. Well, I can also look to designer creation on Dribble. So I will search for login form. And here again, I've got lots of examples of different design of login forms. And I can just try to copy-paste the one I like, actually. OK, so ideas for a logo, ideas for designing graphical components to embed within a website or within a newsletter. Well, let's look at ideas for icon sets. So if I just type icon sets, well, I've got lots of different icon sets. So some of them are not free of use, and some of them are free of use. So you have to check on Dribble if the designer made this set free or not, actually. And you can be even more specific about the icon sets you are looking for. So if I'm looking for a free, let's say a free food icon set, well, here I've got one. And OK, I want like a pizza. If I like this kind of design with dark bordered on the icons, well, I can go for it. And if it's free of use, I can use these icons to embed them within a newsletter or within whatever, my websites where I need to use them, actually. So Dribble is for general inspiration about whatever, anything. Now, let's try to be a bit more specific to the inspiration we are looking for. Let's say now that you are really looking for, you are working with a startup team, and you want to work on products, so either newsletters or website or mobile application, and you want some idea to design graphical components. So you know what graphical components do you know? Let's take the example of a web application, for instance. Give me like maybe 10 different graphical components on a web application. Come on, guys, wake up.
Menu buttons?
Yeah, so button, if we make it simple. A button is a component. A background, yeah, but it's more property than a component. A button is a component. A form, right? A web form is a component. Yeah, a navigation bar, or the navigation bar is the main one, but secondary navigation is just called tabs or nav, okay? I don't know, like an avatar for a picture, let's say, a card to present some information. So if you go on Airbnb, look for a flat, well, the result will be displayed within some kind of cards with a picture. So that's called a card. That's the name of the UI components. So if you know, the first step is to know the component you're looking for. Is it a card? Is it a form? Is it a navigation? But then, if you know it, there are some websites who are listing lots of variation of these precise components. So the first one is call to idea and give you like lots of design of different components. And the second one is UI movements. And this one is more like if you are looking for a component which is a bit of animated, with a bit of movements, as the name says. So let's make a second search. And now it's not a general search because we need some inspiration, like a general inspiration on Dribble. It's a specific search to have some variation about the login form, a footer, and a 404 page. So that's example of actually graphical components. And so we'll go to call to idea and try to find good ones. So let's go to call to idea. And when you get on the home page, again, you know it's not classified the same way as Dribble. It's a bit, Dribble is a bit of a mess because it's all the things posted by designers. And here it's organized by graphical components. So you have calendar, okay, that's a graphical components that you can find on the web application. If I just scroll, I can find, okay, login, this one. So here you have lots of different login design, so login form design. And when you know a bit of CSS, well, it's not a big deal to just put the CSS rules to copy this design. That's really easy to do when you have some CSS basics. The hardest part is to find the inspiration. That's the hardest part as a designer. So if we go on, let's check what other components we have. So list, navigation, so it's more like sidebar navigation. Pricing, so maybe it's pricing forms, or I don't know. Yeah, it's pricing options. If you have different plans for your startup, a free plan, a premium plan, and a whatever plan. So here you have different design of pricing plans, actually. OK, so that's the first one. And the second one that I find really interesting is like UI movements. And this one, as I told you, is more like you are looking, you are already familiar with design, so with static design, and now you are willing to put it a bit further and to look to animated components, basically. And so here, it's kind of a feed with lots of animated components. So if I take this one, well, that's called a carousel. It's just some item that you can just scroll, like side scroll, actually. So you have an example of animation with a bouncing effect on the bag, something like that. OK, so general inspiration, Dribble. If you need specific inspiration for graphical components, well, you can go on these resources. And then about UI, well, I spoke about graphical components, but for me, a prerequisite before you speak about designing components is just having some basic rules about design. And there is some kind of a standard document to read, which is goodui.org. Do you know about this website, goodui.org? So basically, goodui.org, it's not a fancy website with designer's work or whatever. It's just, just a big document, like a PDF document, with the do's and the don'ts in terms of user interface, in terms of how you display the information the right way to be efficient, basically. And I really suggest that you read it. It takes maybe 30 minutes, and it will give you a lot of tips and keys to display your information in the right way. So it's lots of common sense, actually. So maybe you have this common sense, but I think that most people don't have it. It's like something you learned when you do web development. So, OK, you don't have to charge too much your interface because you have to keep it simple on one column instead of having different columns with lots of information. Don't ask someone to sign up, and don't order something to someone, but fake that you are offering something and put your call to action as a secondary step. So that makes sense, but they're just good tips to have in mind when you are trying to make a web page or a newsletter. Don't repeat similar links. So if you have just one contact page, don't put contact list all over your page at different places. Just not too many call to action within a page. So that's just common sense. But I really suggest you go through, and it goes to more and more advanced advice, actually. The first one are obvious, but then there are some ones that are really precious at the end. Feel free to interrupt me or ask me questions. I really like it. OK, so general inspiration, like UI inspiration. And OK, now maybe at some point you are freelancing for a freelance agency, and you have to work on websites. So you don't need inspiration just for the individual components. You just don't need inspiration for a login form or a payment plan. You just need inspiration for an overall website. And for that, there is a really well-known website, which is Awards. And it's a really simple website. It's just a website where you can post your website, and it will be voted by the community. And at the end, on Awards, it's not really a web application. So if you are looking to example for web application, don't look at it on Awards. It's more like for fancy artistic websites. So it makes sense if you work for an artistic agency and you have to deliver artistic websites for art galleries or this kind of stuff, a photograph or something like that. So for freelancers that work in this kind of area, that's really a good asset. If you work on the tech industry, on the web application, which is really technical, well, that's a bit useless, actually. So here on Awards, you have all the winners and the nominees. And you can go to the winners and see, OK, what's the hot website right now? And you can find inspiration about the design of these websites. OK, so I'm done with the first step, which is like find the inspiration to copy-paste the job of others. General inspiration, UI inspiration, website inspiration. Now let's move on. And it's nice to have inspiration, but at some point, you need to find assets. So you need to find some nice pictures, nice icons to use. So we don't speak anymore about inspiration. You know what you are willing to build and to design, but then you need the individual assets to build it. And again, so it's a bit as a resource talk. So at the end, it's more like advice and demo, but here it will be lots of resources, actually. So the first question is, what's a graphical asset? So when I speak about a graphical asset, it's not necessarily an image or an icon. And I listed here the main assets for designers. So the first one is your color scheme. That's a kind of assets, the color scheme you are going to use. Images. So you have to make a distinction between images and icons. Okay, so images is like pictures that you are going to use for background images on big banners or on small cards. So on Airbnb, for instance, you have pictures of the flats, which is the background of the small cards. And icons is more like illustrative icons, kind of drawings. Then you have the fonts. So the fonts are really, really important. It's really an important asset of your design. And you have to take time to pick the right font when you first begin. Then if we go a bit geeky, you have code snippets, because sometimes you want to embed an icon within a website or a newsletter, but you want it to be animated. Like, you know, the loading, the progress bar, or this kind of animated stuff. Well, that's not an icon. An icon is a static asset. An animated asset, well, it's code. It's just a chunk of HTML and CSS, and you just put it in your website or in the newsletter, and you have the animated icon. So I will show you some resource to find some already animated things that you can just copy-paste the code and put it wherever you want. And then there are lots of more advanced resources. So if you want to have, that's the trend right now, using gradients, so background gradients. So that's, instead of using a background picture, you use a gradient that goes from one color to the other with a smooth transition and with an oblique angle or something like that. So we find it a lot, actually. So now that you have listed these assets, so that's really important that you have a mind map about what is a graphical asset. We can go through all the main resources to pick assets and use them. At the end of the talk, we will learn to reshape them and change their colors and build stuff with them. So let's start with colors. So the first tool you need as a designer is called a color picker. So a color picker is just a software, a tool that you use to just pick color wherever you want in your laptop on the screen, and it will copy the hexadecimal code of the color. So there are two main color pickers. I really suggest if you are on Mac, so if you are designers, you must have a Mac normally, but well, maybe you don't. It's to use SIP, the SIP application. That's really a nice color picker. And if you don't have a Macintosh, well, there is an extension on Chrome which is called ColorZilla. It's a Chrome extension. It's the same. It's a color picker that you just launch in Chrome, in the Chrome navigation bar, and it enables you to pick colors within a page. So I show you how it works. So I can go on any website. So let's say I go to the Wagon website, and I like the red color of the logo. Well, I want to know the hexadecimal code of it. So if I'm a geek, I can go to the code and try to see if there are some hexadecimal code somewhere. But if I'm just a designer, well, I have installed SIP, so I can see the symbol of SIP here in my desktop, and I can just have this color picker. So when I just hover on the screen, I can basically click on any part of the screen, and it will copy-paste. It will copy the color, the hexadecimal code of the color. So if I want to click this one, the red, well, I don't know where I'm going to copy it. Let's say here it's weird to copy it in the navigation, but well, that's the hexadecimal code of Le Wagon red, actually. It's a Persian red. And so if I'm in my text or my graphical editor, I can use this code to put some color on any elements at the end. Or if I'm in my CSS code, I can use also this color. And so that's SIP, and you have the same. It's ColorZilla. So ColorZilla, it's an extension on Chrome. You install it, you click on it, and you can pick any color from your page. Well, that's the best advice for colors because it's really hard to pick nice colors. So the best option for you is find a website where you like the way they use colors and just pick the values for that colors, actually. But then there are other resources. If you don't want to pick colors from website, but really have some nice color schemes with colors that fit together, well, that's the two most useful resources. It's coolors.co and colorhunt.co. It's kind of a fancy tools. So Coolors, it's I think it's really, really fancy. It's a color generator. So how it works is like you just go on colors and you hit space, sorry, and it just gives you some color schemes with colors that fit together regarding some algorithm about how colors are supposed to correlate one to each other. And at some point, you can lock any color. So if you like this kind of orange-pink, you can lock it here. You've got the hexadecimal here, and you can keep on like seeing the complementary colors of this orange, actually. If you want to lock this green or blue, you can lock it and keep scrolling on the complementary colors of this green and this orange. So that's the first option. And if you are a bit lazy and you don't want to build yourself your color scheme, you can go on color hunt. And on color hunt, basically, it's already color schemes that are nice, actually. So it's the best option if you're lazy. Just go on color hunt and pick the color scheme you like. Or use a color picker if you have an idea of a precise website where you like the colors. OK, so that's it with color. A color picker and nice resources, and you just pick your color scheme and period. OK, there is another resource I like. It's this one. So there is a guy called Nathan Speller, and he developed some tool. So it's this one. So he's a designer, and he said, OK, on Dribble, when you post some design work, well, you can give the color scheme of your design work with the hexadecimal colors you used. And Dribble has an API that you can use as a developer to know what are the trending colors on Dribble. So this guy, Nathan Speller, he made some kind of a geek tool using the API of Dribble to see what's the trend right now in the Dribble community in terms of color schemes. So you start with the random colors, and you see the most associated ones based on Dribble work, actually. So we see here what's the trend right now. So you see it's a bit of a sad days right now. Like maybe 2 years ago it was shiny purple and shiny green, but now it's like more like autumn colors, like browns and soft gray and blue. Well, it's a bit boring actually right now. Yeah.
Actually found out, for example, an industry. So websites within an industry, and found out what is the usual color. Colors, you know what I mean?
You can go on Facebook and pick the blue with the color picker. That will give you the hexadecimal code of Facebook. I mean, you can, if you know some examples, you go on the website and you take the color picker I show you, and you pick the colors. There is no website like listing colors in terms of industry, to my knowledge. Maybe there are, but it's not really correlated to your business. The colors are just a designer thing. That's not really correlated to business. Maybe like big corporations, they use boring blue. Maybe that's something that's common to all big corporations. But except from this rule, I don't know if there is some correlation between colors and industries. OK, we're done with colors. So that was the first asset. Now let's speak about images. So there are tons of different blogs with high definition pictures that are free of use. But I just listed the three main ones I use a lot. So the first one is Flickr. So Flickr is kind of a popular website. It's, I think you know it. OK, maybe you do. That's good news. So Flickr, you've got exhaustive choice because anyone is putting his pictures on Flickr. So if I want a picture of Paris, I can Paris, and here I have the result of all the pictures posted on Flickr about Paris, and I can filter with like I don't remember So you have different license, and so basically you have to use a free of use license to be able to use it in a free way. So Flickr is the first resource, but you have there are so many things and there are also a bit of a trash there. So if you need more selective high definition pictures, there is a really nice website which is Pexels. And it's a bit the same as Flickr, but they are more selective about the picture you can find. So here you have kitties pictures with cats. That's really popular pictures. You can look for food. Let's say you want some. And here you have like high definition food pictures that you can use if you have a food service, let's say. And let's say it's a bit more high quality than Flickr. You don't have to lose time to really search for the good pick. So Flickr is a bit mainstream. You have pixels, and there is a third one, which is really convenient when you are coding, because sometimes your designer is not providing you the picture that because it's not ready yet, and so you are a bit stuck when you are designing a website. You need that's called a placeholder. So it's just an image that you put on your website, waiting to have the definitive assets. And so you don't want to download an image for a placeholder. You just want to have a convenient service where you just need a URL, and with the URL, you just put a picture on your website. And there is unsplash it. And so unsplash it, it's simple. You just have a URL. So let's say we put a random image here. So I'm in my code. I want a random image of 200 pixel with a 200 pixel width and a 300 pixel height. And I can change the proportion within the URL. So if I want a big one for a banner picture, I can put a 1,000 pixel width picture with a 600 pixel height. And then I have some random pictures. And I can just refresh and some random pictures. So that's when you prototype, or when you make a mockup, when you are a CSS designer, and you are waiting for the definitive pictures from your designer, actually. You don't want to lose time and download stuff. Just use this URL. OK, so in Unsplash, you have lots of options that you can add to the URL if you need a blurred picture, a black and white picture, whatever, a food picture. So you can customize a bit the URL from Unsplash. OK, so let's move on. So for the images, that's pretty much it. You have tons of different specific blogs about pictures, but these 3 ones, for me, it's sufficient. Flickr, exhaustive, pixel selective, and Unsplash is for prototyping. Now let's move on to icons. So there was a big website for icons, which is the Noun project. And that's the historic website where all the designers were putting their icons. So you have to know it because it's part of the history of web design. So it's called the Noun project. But the thing with the Noun project, it's black and white. So even if it's vectorial image, you can reshape them. It's black and white. And as you see on the landing page, they are launching a new product, which is, surprise, a colorful icon solutions. Because they know that black and white is dead and they have to reinvent themselves. But if you still need some black and white icons, well, you can go on the Noun project and make any search, like if you need a suitcase, icons, or anything. Well, you can go on Noun project if you have lots of different icons for suitcase or whatever. Now, if you want to get more colorful icons, there is a really cool website which is Icon Store. And here you have icon sets. So in the Noun project, it's not really sets. You make one search and you have different propositions for different designers, and that don't necessarily fit together in terms of design. So if you need the set, well, you can go on Icon Store, and actually all these sets, also you can find them on Dribble, but the original source is Icon Store, and you can actually filter by category. So if you need a set, let's say about entertainment, entertainment. Well, here you have. If you want I don't know, a Star Wars website and you need some flat colorful icons for Star Wars, well, you can use this one, and it's free of use on Icon Store. It's 3 sets of icons. If you are launching an app in the legal industry, you work with lawyer, well, you can look for. Well, is there a legal things right there? Do you see something close to legal or not really? OK, let's say you want to launch something in the sport industry. Well, you can find icons about sports. So it's and that's the same designer that built all these icons, so that they go well together at the end. OK, so that's the 2 resources. So a bit of the black and white historic one and the new cool one with colorful sets of icons. And now let's speak about fonts. So fonts is a bit the same as colors. You need some tools to inspect the fonts used in websites. And you also have some resource to find fonts, actually. So the font picker, the equivalent of a color picker, it can be called a font picker. There is this plugin on Chrome which is called Font Face Ninja. And it's really convenient. You just go on, so let's say we go on Medium. And we want to know which font is used by Medium, because they are the font specialists, right? They really worked a lot on the fonts. So it's a plugin, so you can just launch it in the browser here. And then it allows you to mask all the things that are not fonts, actually, that are not text. And once you've done that, well, you can inspect any part of the text to know which font is being used, and not only which font is being used, but in which proportions. So what's the letter spacing? Because sometimes with some specific font, playing on the letter spacing that can really sublime your font, like I don't know how to say that. It can really add something to your font, actually. So here we see that actually it's an Apple system regular with 0 pixel of letter spacing, which 16 pixel of font size and 22 pixel of line height. So it gives you the proportion in which the font is being used, and that really counts as much as the font itself, actually. And so if you want to know what's the font chart, like the font scheme at Le Wagon, well, we could go on Le Wagon. So it's not really original, it's a famous one. So if we just do the same exercise here, so we mask all the things that are not fonts, and here we can inspect. And as you can see on Le Wagon, our font is Avenir. It's a French name. All the fonts are called with French name. I don't know why. And as you can see, we play on the letter spacing. We have -2 pixels of letter spacing because for this specific font, like making the letters stick one to each other, it adds something to the font. It gives some kind of a bold effect, a nice bold effect. So that's the first resource. Font Face Ninja is a bit as a color picker. You want to pick fonts from other websites. Now let's go through the other resource to find actually the font files and to be able to use them. So if you work on a website, the most famous one is Google Fonts. And so on Google Fonts, well, you can do your shopping of web fonts. So the most standard web font is Open Sans. So that's the first result I get when I get on Google Fonts. And Open Sans is really a good choice for your main text, not for the headers, but for the main text of your newsletter, of your website. Then, so Google Font is free of use actually. So now, and if you want to use it, you just add it to your collection, and it will give you a link to add to your website to be able to use it in the CSS. Now you can filter by category, because there are different categories of fonts. The one with serif, the one without serif, the cursive one that feels a bit handwritten. And I give you the one I like. So for the headers, not for the core text, there is Montserrat, which actually looks a bit as Avenir, the one we use at Le Wagon. So it's a kind of a bold font. It's a bit the same as in Product Hunt. They use also kind of a bold font on Product Hunt. But it's the free version, let's say, of Avenir. If you're looking for more like thin letters, you can go to Roboto, this one. And as you can see, the letters that are more like thin and elegant, let's say. New York style or whatever. And I give you a third one, which is Railway. So Railway is it's another design a bit with a lighter font. So here you can look at many fonts, and that's the free version. But sometimes when you really want to invest in your fonts, and at some point you need to buy a font suite. And for that, there are lots of websites selling fonts. So you can use My Fonts, for instance. Or there are lots of them, actually, selling fonts. And I will give you some tips to not spend too much money on this website, because it's so expensive. When you buy one font, then you realize that you have bought the thin oblique version for $50, and you say, oh man, I need to buy the regular bold version also. It's $50 more. Oh, but I also need some light effects for some of the text, so I need to buy the regular light version. And at the end of the day, also they offer you like the web files for the font and the desktop files. And if you don't know some hacks, well, you can actually buy both, and that double also the price you pay. So at the end of the day, you can really spend like 600 euros on this kind of websites, because you don't know some. So I will speak about that later on. So here, if we want to look at Avenir, which is the font used by Le Wagon, well, we can find it here. And as you can see, if I just go to the, okay, let's click on this one. Okay, so you see you have different versions. So this one is like light regular version, there is a discount. It's only $33 or pounds, sorry. But if I want the light oblique, it's an additional 33 pounds. If I want the Roman, that's like semi-bold, like normal, this one is another $33 and so on and so on. Okay. But at some points, they make the difference. Like compared to a Google font, having really a professional font, it's really, I don't know how to say that because it's really you don't really notice it, but that doesn't give the same effect to your users. They really feel you are professional, actually, in what you do. OK, so there are these two resources, but maybe there are other ones. And we'll finish with some kind of fancy graphical assets. The first one is gradients. So there is a website with a cool gradients. It's called UI Gradients. No, not UI Movements, UIgradients.com. And again, it's something you will use on a newsletter or on a website if you want some colorful gradient as a background with some text above. And here you can just scroll and have different, actually colorful gradients. And if you want to get the code, I guess there is get CSS code here, and you can get the CSS code and put it in your template of email or in your WordPress website or wherever you need a background, actually. And finally, let's finish with the geek thing, which is CodePen. And CodePen, it's when you are looking for a chunk of code, a chunk of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript that goes together and that makes an animated icon, let's say. So if I'm looking for a loader, okay, I want some kind of symbol which is loading, I can search for it on CodePen. So let's make a search, loading. And I get different code for loading symbols, animated loading symbols. So here we are. We can go for, let's say, this one. And here you have different design of loaders with different animations. And basically, you have the code for it, the HTML code. So this, in this case, the HTML code is SVG. So SVG is one of the file format for icons, but that's a vectorial format that is used for the web. And with the CSS, you are able to animate the SVG. So actually, if you open an SVG file within a text editor to visualize the kind of the code behind, it looks like HTML, it's tags. Whereas if you open a PNG or JPEG file, it looks like shit on a text editor. It's binary code, you don't understand it. But SVG file, it's something that you can use within a website or a newsletter, and then with some CSS, some JavaScript, you can add some animation on the icon. That's a vectorial format. So a loader, let's say I want a progress bar. And then we'll. So really, what you don't want on CodePen, don't try to take a code that you have to override then, because it's a big chunk of code, you don't really understand it. And either me, even if I know JavaScript and CSS, sometimes you don't understand the logic of the code. So it's more for small animated components that you just use it in a raw way. You just put it on the code and you got the animation and that's it. You don't try to override it too much. That's not the good use case for CodePen.
Are these still free to use?
Yeah, it's code actually. So code is always free. It's like open source, I guess. I think actually. So if you need progress bar, you have different progress bar animations with some steps or a continuous one. And I give you one I like, actually. It's because we're in London. So let's say you want to embed some kind of beer animation at the end of a newsletter to say, thank you for coming to the event. Let's have a drink at what point or whatever. Well, you can here you have a SVG beer animation. So there is a bit of JavaScript. So you just take these three codes, you put them in the right place on the project, and you've got this animation. So if I refresh it, well, you got I think the glass which is filling with beer with this nice effect. So for me, that's really the good use case of CodePen. You find a good animated thing that you are going to use it like that without trying to override it, and you put it in your newsletter or in your website. I like this one actually, because it's like the cask beer. It's like London style. Boom. Okay. So we are done with resources, and it's the end of the resource, because Actually, I gave you all my resources. I have no more resources to give, and for the next day, you just go on Product Hunt and try to keep updated at the end. So now let's speak about more interesting stuff, which are some rules of thumb that you have to respect to make clean design. Because sometimes I hear from some students or from some entrepreneurs, well, I'm not a designer. Well, okay, but except in the case where you have to develop some kind of artistic website with tropical palm trees and shining green and really a crazy color scheme and whatever, if you just work with web application and clean design, well, everyone is a designer in this case. You just have to respect some rules of thumb and to know these rules of thumb, and if you just apply them, well, it's clean design, that works, that looks professional. So at some point, if you want really to be a graphical designer and inventing some crazy color scheme with purples and crazy shapes, well, you have to be a designer for that. But for standard design, well, you just have to respect some rules. So I try to gather a bit all the rules that I use every day when I have to design something, and we'll try to apply them with Sketch afterwards. So the first really rule for me, which is really important for an entrepreneur, it's don't spend too much time on your graphical identity. You know the resource, so you just take one day at some point with your co-founders or yourself if you're alone and say, okay, today I just fixed some font and color scheme for my company. And that's it. I stick to it, and at some point, if I've got 100 users and I have to change it, well, that's no big deal. And even if you have a huge amount of users, you can still change your graphical identity. Give me an example of a very famous service we changed the logo recently. Uber. You know Uber, they changed the logo. Now it looks like shit now. So Airbnb, they changed their logo, right? Now it's a kind of a...
Facebook, there was a small change.
Yeah, so basically even big companies who have billions of users, well, they change their graphical identity. So if you bootstrap your product and, well, you have to change it with 100 users, that's no big deal. They will follow you if they want the product. So fix it at the beginning and stick to it, and then changing whenever you want. So I just give you our graphical identity at Le Wagon. It's really simple. So that's our color scheme. So at some point, we liked Le Wagon is kind of a van, a Californian van, and we wanted a Californian kind of pink-orange for that. A bit the same as on the Sunrise logo. You know the Sunrise application for calendar? They use the same I think it's pretty similar. And so that's a Persian red. We call it the Persian red. Now we didn't want a plain black, so we use kind of a subtle variation of the black. For the blue, we use this one. And so the two last ones, they are pretty in the trend of what's going on in Dribble. You remember when we look at the trend on Dribble? Actually, we are not really creative at Le Wagon in terms of design. We just follow the trends that there is on Dribble right now, basically. So maybe at some point, maybe next year, Le Wagon will become shiny and yellow, but now it's kind of a basic design. That's what I want to tell you. So if you want to, it's good to name the colors. So there are really old school websites to name the colors. So name. Because doing that, it's bringing some design thinking, like some design culture in your company. Doing like naming colors and giving yourself an identity. When someone is going to join your company, you have something to show him to show that design matters, and it gives a good culture in your company actually. So there is the old school website where you can just put the hexadecimal code of a color and give you a name for that. So let's do the exercise with this orange. So I just pick this orange. And let's see what's the name of this little orange. And that's the famous persimmon. That's the persimmon orange. So let's say you want to use this one, give it a name. It's fun to name your color scheme. So at Le Wagon, we use this color scheme. For the font, well, we use, as we saw sooner, we use Avenir mainly for headers and text, but we play on the font weight to have different effects on the text and on the headers. And for the headers, when we want to write Le Wagon not in the logo but within the text, well, we use, as we saw later on, -2 pixels of letter spacing, because that had some flavor to the font. And last but not least, it's also important to, within within your graphical identity, there is also the way you spell your company name. Because the way the letters are shaped, it matters in terms of design. And so Le Wagon, we say Le Wagon. It's two separated words with cap letters with the L and the W. And we don't write it Le Wagon in a downcase letter that's in one word, or Le Wagon in two words with downcase letter. So that's the way we want to write it. And when someone is working with us, launching Le Wagon in another city, he has to respect these guidelines. So it's simple things, but do it, take one day and do it when you start your thing. Now the second thing is, when you choose your font, I suggest you try to invest in a nice font. Don't use the Google font. Try to really buy a nice font. But remember that a font is not only the font itself. It means also some ratio that you are going to use with the fonts. So and you can play on three different things. No, more than three actually. You can play on the size of the font, on the line height of the font, on the spacing of the letters, and on the weight of the font. And playing on that will really add something to the font. So if I take, again, Le Wagon example, and we're trying to fuck up a bit with the font. So let's say, OK, this one, that respects the guidelines of Le Wagon, right? So if I try to inspect the code and play a bit with the CSS to change the proportion. And let's look at what's happening, actually. So I pick it, and let's say I had some letter spacing. Wow. It's not the same effect, actually. And we like it like that, a bit like with the sticky letters. I think that goes with the, I don't know, the identity of Le Wagon. But because it's downcase letter, and if you take the example of upcase letter, such as in the navigation bar here, well, in this case, if I put some negative letter spacing on it, look, well, it's not adapted for upcase letter. And on the opposite, if I try to space a bit the letters, well, in this case, that's working for this specific. So even if it's still Avenir, but the fact that it's upcase letter, well, you can play on the letter spacing. So if you buy Gotham, Rounded, or I don't know, all the classical fonts, Varela, or, well, try to look at what the proportion you are going to use, because that goes together with the font at the end. OK. So as I told you before, don't buy all the version of the font files. Because you have the desktop version. That's the one that you can use then on your Macintosh when you open your graphical editor and you want to build a logo typo, or you want to insert some text within your graphical editor. And that's the TTF. The desktop version on Macintosh is the TTF file. And what you can do is like just buy the desktop version. And there are some websites like Font Squirrel. They have a converter, actually, I think. And what you do here, you just upload your desktop file for the font, and it will give you the web font files. So don't make the error of buying all of them because you think they are separated things to buy. You can just convert them. I did that, actually. I lose like 200 euros. But that was at the beginning of Le Wagon, so that mattered to me at the time. OK. Now we're going to more like redesign tips. When you have several texts, play on the contrast. So here we've got one big, bold, black header. So with the font weight, which is bold, with the font size, which is big. And just below, we've got a subline, a subheader. And this one, you can see that's not the same font weight. It's a lighter version of the text. And also, it's not the same color. So we have a dark black for the main header, and we have a lighter gray for the subheader. And so if you want your user to be able to read the information, if there is no contrast and everything is bold and black, they won't be able to see it, actually. Because for them, it's just lots of information, and they want just to, to go somewhere else because they are overwhelmed with information that looks the same. 5, like the fifth rule of thumb is, except if you are working for a gallery that wants tropical design with pink flamingos, like don't play fancy with the colors. Just play with the gray scale and add colors with little touches, small touches. So give me an example of a very popular website where they just use the grayscale, mostly. It's a blog platform. No, a blog, a kind of a fancy blogging platform.
Medium?
Yeah, Medium. If you look at Medium, you know Medium? Well, there is no color on Medium, just black, like just a grayscale, just some variation of grays. So we'll go to Medium to see, to notice that. That's making your designer eye here. So there are no actually there are no color. They're just the Facebook color, the Facebook Connect, and you see there are some variation. So here it was not on purpose, but you know the header and subheader, it's exactly the same as in my slide. A bold header and a subheader with like lighter letters and a light gray. And what they do is they bring some color with maybe the green of their logos or small touches. So if you don't to go in to take risks, just use the grayscale and add some small touches of colors. That's what we do with Le Wagon. There is just the red that brings some colors, but the rest is kind of the grayscale. Okay, this one is a bit of a global advice. Is sometimes when I prototype application within the bootcamp with students who are building their prototype of web application, they put big headers that takes 1/3 of the screen because they tell me, well, I don't have enough data for the moment. So before my user posts some flats or some recipes or whatever the website is dealing with, it's empty. So I need to put big header so that it doesn't feel that there is nothing on the website. And I always tell the guy, well, be careful because from the moment like people will start to use your website and post things, well, one third or 1/2 of your screen is busy with a useless header. That and the information, which is the flat listing or the recipe listing or whatever, it's just spoiled by your big fat headers. So what matters when you design either a newsletter, website, anything, is to really care about the space surrounding the objects. And that's called the, so here it's really a famous example of negative space. So in terms of design, the negative space is the space that surrounds objects, text, images. And it is as much important as the object itself at the end, because that creates boundaries. So I don't know if you noticed something in the FedEx logo. It's really a popular example, actually. Yeah, there is an arrow between the E and the X, a white arrow, and that's a shape that's not created by the letters. It's created by the space, actually. So it's a famous example of negative space, that the space matters as much as the object themselves. So you have to space things, so that people identify the zone of your newsletter or the zone of your website. Okay, please don't use this kind of, I know I show you like pixels and fancy startup resources for pictures, but don't use the startup stocks icons, because everyone is using it right now. So especially if you want to launch something in the startup world, if you are, I don't know, working for an accelerator or a co-working space and you want to make a landing page or whatever, don't go to the easy way and pick the first startup stock image, because everyone is using the same image. So if you have a Macintosh, a cup of coffee, some girls with Post-its or whatever, well, put it to the trash, because people are really bored with this kind of images. So try to find something a bit more personal again.
Well, can you define what a startup stock is?
Coffee, Macintosh, Post-its.
Okay.
So
it's
hipsters.
Big splash screen. We see usually this set of photos, and while you slide down the website, I mean the front page, you go actually to the next pages.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
It's one pager. It's just a page with when you scroll and you have different contents.
Yeah, and then you have different photos.
Yeah.
Background photos.
Yeah. But here I speak about the picture themselves, not about the animation of the page. And for your background image, don't use, even if you have animation, it's still a poor startup stock picture. So no animation can fix it. Or the animation is replacing it by something else. Okay, so that's an advice. So even it's a bit cheap or whatever, try to look at personal things. So now we're going to more technical things. It's common sense, but at the end, when you first begin, well, your design is not good because you don't follow these simple rules. So add filters and shadows whenever your pictures are too contrasted. So I give you an example. So let's say I want to create a banner in a newsletter to announce that we are launching Le Wagon in London. Well, I pick a picture of London on any stock, and I put some text here. It's too contrasted, so you can't read the text You can't read the text, right? So now let's add a filter, a blue filter. Well, you can read the text. And if we push it a bit further, let's add some text shadow on the text. So a text shadow is just some shadow behind the text with a color and an opacity, a transparency. Okay, and it's even better. We really see the contrast and we see the text. We can read it actually. So use filters whenever you have pictures that are too contrasted, and use shadows if you need to. And for the shadows, don't play heavy. Just try to put a shadow with a color which is a bit close to the background color, so that it's not too obvious. Okay, so I think that's the best advice I can give you about design. Is good design, if you want to go to the standard way, is the one you don't notice at first sight. From the moment someone say, oh, you put some border, well, that's not a good border actually. From the moment someone say, oh, you put some radius on your corners, well, that's not a good radius. So I give you some example. So let's take some example of good design and poor designs with different examples. So let's start with the radius. So do you see the radius on the corners in this case? Yeah? Please answer, even if it's a simple question. Yeah, so is it a good radius? No, it's not, because we can't see it actually. So it's really a poor radius. Everyone noticed that there is a radius. And here in this case, well, it's really much more elegant because it's a small one. So again, if you don't see it, that's good design. If you have to get closer to see it, well, that means it's well designed. This is a poor border. Everyone sees that there is a border. So except in the case where you want to design an old school, Windows 98 application with big borders everywhere, well, that's not a good border. And this one, so it's so subtle that you don't see it actually, but it's really a border which is a light gray and close to the background color. So it's not, we don't see it as a border, we more see it as a way to contrast the white card on the background actually. In this case, this is a really bad shadow. It's translated horizontally and vertically, but too much. It's translated for 20 pixels on the right and 20 pixels at the bottom. And the color is really too dark, so we really can't see it. And in this case, again, it's nicer because if you're not used to it, if I show it to some friends who are not used to design, well, maybe at first sight he won't see that there is a shadow actually. What he will see is like, okay, there's some nice contrast on this box actually. So that's really an important tip, like play easy on the borders, on the radius, on the shadows, and with colors close to the background colors at the end. Now, the last tips, which is also common sense, but that's really important for me. When you are using icons that are going to use them one next to each other, try to think of their proportions and not only on their size. So I give you an example here. I've got different icons that I get from an icon set on Pexel, for instance. So it's icons about food. But imagine that I've got some PNG files, and they are all the same width and the same heights, like 500 pixels square, let's say. So even if the file, they have the image, they've got the same size, you see that that's not the same proportion. So if I put these images on a newsletter or on a website, the user will feel that they are not the same size because they don't have the same proportion. But if I change their proportion with a graphical editor, now, not only they have the same size, the file they've got the same size, but also they've got the same proportion. So that's really a basic rule, but I see so many guys using icon sets and not thinking about that, and then it feels like a bit shit because the icons, they don't feel they have the same size, even if the image itself has the same size actually. Okay, so that was all the rules that you have to keep in mind when you want to design anything. So now let's make a bit of practice and try to build some stuff with Sketch. So Sketch is a really popular tool to build graphical assets and also mockups. So we are going to make simple things. So let's create, for instance, a newsletter for a banner that we put in the newsletter to announce that we are launching Le Wagon in London. Let's take an icon set for social icons and try to change their colors maybe. And let's take maybe some more advanced icons and try to reshape them with more advanced treatments. So I'm not an expert of Sketch. Actually, I did a bit of Sketch at the beginning of Le Wagon, but then we had some other design, like some other front-end developer in the team, which was far much better than me in design. So I will just show you the things I used at the time. So first, we need to find some assets to build a banner to announce the launch of Le Wagon in London. So what do I need to build the banner for my newsletter? So you know what's a banner? So you open a newsletter, you've got some kind of an image, a background image with a text like Le Wagon is coming to London or whatever. So what do I need? What assets do I need? What? A color? Yeah, a color. So let's take Le Wagon's color because it's the launch of Le Wagon. So I'll pick the red of Le Wagon, okay? So I need a color. What do I need next? Come on, guys, it's really easy.
Picture.
Yeah, I need a picture for my background. I don't have any picture right now. I need a picture. What do I need if I want to write some text?
Font.
A font, okay. So in this case, I already bought the Avenir font, which is the font of Le Wagon. So I have installed the desktop font, the TTF file, so I can use it within Sketch. When you install the desktop font, you can use it with Sketch. So I've got all I need. I've got a color, which is Le Wagon red color. I have to find an icon for London. So where can I go? Let's go to the selective resource, which is Pexel, and let's look for London picture. Okay, and here you have high definition pictures of London. So let's pick one of them. So maybe let's pick this one because it's we have to reshape it a bit because it's a bit too the height is a bit too large, too big for our newsletter. We have to change it a bit. So let's use this thing. So I just copy the image and use and open Sketch. So here I open a new project on Sketch, okay? And I can just paste my icon. Okay, so I have my icon, my picture, sorry, and I can use it. So what do I need to do to build a banner for my newsletter? Yeah, I need to crop it. So I can crop it, but what you can do with Sketch is creating masks. So let's say you have a square picture and you want it to be an avatar profile. Like you can apply a mask. That's called a mask in design. And in this case, that's also a mask, but that won't be a circle. That will be a rectangle with a smaller height. Okay. So for that, you can insert shapes here on Sketch. So I will insert a rectangle, let's say like that. I can select the two elements and create a mask here. Okay? And then when I open the mask, well, what I can do is kind of, play on either the image. So I can just try to center the image whenever I want, like let's say like that. And I also can change the shape that will impose the shape of the picture actually. So if you need an avatar picture, you can also create a mask on Sketch. Okay, so now I've got the good proportion for my banner. It's a bit, the height is a bit smaller. What do I need to do?
Text.
Yeah, I need a text. So a text, I can either inject it here, text, or I can hit T and click, and here I can inject a text. So here I've just installed the desktop Avenir font. So I have it available on Sketch. But if you buy a desktop font, you just have to double click on the TTF file, and you can use it in Sketch afterwards. So I select Avenir, and I will write a text. So can you see the text right now? So what do I need to do actually? Make it bigger. So here on the right, you can play on lots of different things. So either you go with the mouse and resize things, or you go on the right and you can fix dimensions more precisely. So here I can change the font size because it's a bit small. So I will put like maybe 80 pixels of a font size or 60 pixels. I can make it bold, right? I can make it white. So here I can just select the color picker. So there are a color picker. In most graphical tools, you've got a color picker actually. And you can click on it on this icon and pick any color here. Or you can choose in the palette the color you want. So here let's pick a white. And still the image is too contrasted in this case. So what do I need to do? Try to follow the rules that I gave you. Yeah, put a filter. So what's a filter? It's a rectangle. So I insert a new rectangle here. I put it here. And you see here on the left, the order where you insert your shape, that creates layers. So there are shapes above other shapes. So, and by just reordering on the navigation your assets on the left, you can change the layers. So here I want my rectangle to be below my text. Okay, so I will put it below on the left. And then I want to change the color and the transparency of my filter, because for the moment it's just hiding the picture. So how do I do that? I just can kill the border of the picture of the rectangle here on the right, and I can change the color. So we say that we are going to use Le Wagon color. So I go on lewagon.com, and I'm going to use what? A color picker. So I click on that. I just copy this value. I go to Sketch. I click on the fill here, text, and I can copy paste here the hexadecimal code of my red. And here I've got the red of Le Wagon. And what I can do also is to play on the opacity here, okay, to make it a bit transparent. Okay, so I just have to resize it so that it's exactly the style of my banner. So if I need a second header, like Le Wagon is coming to London, what's the rule of thumb again? Lighter font weight, smaller size. And also, it's good to change a bit the color of the text. So if it's plain white for the main text, well, it's good to, on this one, to add a bit of transparency, to create a contrast between this one and this one. Okay? And what I need to add is on those guys, I need to add some text shadow if I want to. And so here again, on the right, you have lots of options. And there is an option which is called shadows. And you can define the translation, the horizontal translation of your shadow. So take it easy, don't put big numbers, just 2 pixels of translation. The vertical translation, the level of blur, is it a blurred shadow or a really precise shadow? And the color of the shadow. So here, let's put a 1 pixel shift horizontally, 1 pixel shift vertically, and 3 pixel blur. And let's pick a shadow which is, let's say, a transparent black, actually. So here I can play on the transparency. And here, we don't really see it, but there is a really small shadow that makes a bit the text more readable, actually. And that's it. I can just select all my shapes, group it here on the right. I group all these shapes. So I can name it banner, newsletter, London. Okay, and now on the bottom here, I can export this thing as a PNG, as a JPEG, even as a SVG file if I need to use it as a SVG thing, actually. So you just click on PNG and you export your file. So I will just export it on the desktop here. And that's it. I've built my banner on my desktop, and I can just embed it in a newsletter or whatever, in a flyer or okay. So let's make another thing. Let's find a set of icons and try to change their colors to customize them a bit. So we are going to start with social icons because everyone knows them and it's not risky. So where can I go? What's the resource to find icons? Yeah, so the non-project is the black and white choice. So I can go on the icon store and look for social icons. And here you have lots of different versions. I will take this one, it's like flat colors. Flat colors, it means that there is no border or shadow, it's just flat colors actually. So I click on it. I download the icon set. I open it. And then when I open it, I have the colored version. Okay, so I can use the colorful icons or the mini version, so maybe they are a bit smaller. And here I can just take the SVG file and drag and drop it into my sketch project. Okay, so it's always grouped. So I suggest you can ungroup all these guys So you have, and then you have access to each icon individually, actually. So let's say I want to use, well, for Le Wagon, what we have is the YouTube channel, so I can use the YouTube icon here. What do we have? We have a GitHub account, because we are geeks, so I can use the GitHub account here. We have a LinkedIn education page for the students, and we don't have a Spotify account yet. We have a Slack account for Le Wagon alumni. So I will pick these guys. And so here, it's what I told you about my tips. It's like it's the place where you can resize the icons so that they have the same proportions, right? So what's cool with the SVG file is not only you can embed it in the HTML code and add some animation, but also you have access to the different shapes of the file. So yeah, if I click on YouTube here, I can open, it's like a folder on the left. I can open it, and I've got access to the different shape. So let's say I want black and white icon. I can change basically the color of all the shapes of my icon. Okay? And so for the moment, let's say it's a bit boring, but okay, let's take this blue, for instance. So we'll just pick this blue, and that will be my color for the icons. So I can just here inject this code, and I've got the blue YouTube icon. And I can do the same actually for this one. So if I open the GitHub SVG file, it's one shape only, and I can make it blue if I want to. Resize it a bit. So here, when you resize, you can lock the proportion so that it keeps the same ratio between the width and the height. And thanks to that, you don't lose the square. It's just the same proportion. So let's do that for this one. For LinkedIn, if I open it, there is the I, the N, and the background blue here. So again, I can change the blue of LinkedIn to have my personal blue. And for Slack, I don't know how it's designed, but I would say you can select all the dash and also change their color to like that. Okay, you also have the dots to change actually. Okay, and so you have the blue flat version of Slack actually. Okay, so actually that's really simple to use because you have access to the shape. So if you want to fuck up with the Slack logo, well, there is a new version of the Slack logo. It's like a competitor service. And the rules here are try to resize the icons so that when you export them, they have the same size and the same proportion as well. Okay, so maybe let's do something a bit more like funnier than the icon, the social icons. So on the icon store, we can look for more like other sets. So maybe which one are good? So let's try to find some flat color because it's always easy to reshape and to change the colors if it's flat at the beginning. So okay, let's use maybe this one. So I download a new set, and I will show you some useful tip actually. So again, I've got the SVG file for my pack, my icon pack. I can just put it here. Okay, I will just you can zoom and dezoom to have different part of your environment. And here I can ungroup also these guys. And let's say so wow. Let's pick some of these guys. So let's pick, so we opened the school in London, Le Wagon, so we need maybe some icons that illustrate a school or, I don't know, whatever. So here there is like a school bag, something like a school bag, so I can pick this one and actually put it here. And that works the same way. So here, if I open my SVG file, I've got access to all the shapes. So if I want a bag, because we target entrepreneurs, so that's grown up, that's not child, so they need a a larger bag than this one. It's a bit small, this one. So here you can change actually the all the shapes. So if you want a big bag, let's say it will be like that. Okay, it's a bag for grown-ups who go back to school. And I can also change the colors and lots of things. And the last tip I want to show you is like, let's say sometimes there is no real use. So here I can change the color of the bag if I want to be to have a bag which respects the color scheme of Le Wagon. But sometimes what you can do also is combine icons to build new ones. That can be also a good way to invent yourself your icons. So let's say I want to take this agenda or whatever. I use this one, and let's say I combine it with this loop. Okay, and here I just have maybe to resize the loop to put it like that in the corner. And I can just group these guys here. And it's a new icon at the end. So you can also build your own icons by combining different icons and building your graphical elements for newsletters or whatever. You have some question about Sketch? Something you want me to show? Or?
Yeah, I have a quick question. What you've shown so far is relatively static, and we probably could have used Illustrator because it works a bit like Illustrator.
Yeah, actually, yeah.
In terms of animation and so on for prototyping, for example, I'm using Archer prototyping.
Okay, I'm not. If you want to have a designer talk, I'm not the good person. Okay. Well, the animation I do is web animation, so it's mostly CSS animation on SVG file. It's web animation. And so for that, sometimes I use the CodePen, the resource I showed you. What animation are you using?
Talking about more web app applications. So for example, if you have an off-canvas menu or to do the page flows of a user on your site and stuff like that.
If you want to build a working mockup with different views, so with Sketch you can make a mockup of your different pages, and then you can plug it to InVision or other tools to build an actual clickable mockup. Or that's what you are speaking about, or I'm not sure. Yeah. Okay. So what I do when I do mockups is mostly static mockups, because I don't have time to really make usable mockups. I don't need it in my daily job. But okay, so if we speak about mockups, so the static version of your mockup is pretty simple. It's things like that. So let's say this is a banner. Okay, here. So let's say you build your mockup. So I want a button. So a button is a rounded rectangle here. So you can just put a button, change the border of the color of the border, change the background, put a text, change the font size, something like that. So here you have a button. So I show you static mockups actually. Okay? You can join these two guys and group it and create a button. And by doing that, you build yourself your library of graphical components to build your mockup. So you can copy paste and reuse your buttons, your banners, and if you dezoom, you can build different pages, right, with different components. And then if you plug, I think, Sketch to InVision or other tools, you can make your different page within your Sketch mockup. You can connect them on click of some of the buttons, and actually have some usable mockup to demo. But I have never done that, so I can't really speak about that more than that. You have other question? Okay. But for me, that was a general talk of lots of resources and techniques that you have to keep in mind. And the main message for me on my side is like the design is really accessible to anyone at this point. That's really, I want that tonight you tell yourself this message. It's like, I can design pretty much all the icons, the logos, the banners I need. I don't need to pay someone or when I'm launching my business. Thank you very much.